Welcome to the Learning Can't Wait podcast, a Full Mind production. At Full Mind, our vision is to ensure every child has access to an exceptional education. Each episode, we will be joined by pathfinders within and around the education space who are bringing about transformational change on behalf of deserving students. I am your host, Haley Spierbauer. Welcome back, everybody, to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. We have an exciting panel joining us today. We have the two leaders of organizations that were heretofore separate organizations, but have come together with a greater mission in mind. We have Steve Colón, the Chief Executive Officer of Bottom Line, who is a dad and a first-generation college grad. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thrilled to have you here alongside John Branam, the Chief Transformation Officer at Bottom Line, also a dad and also a first-generation college grad. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Haley. Great to be here.
I like how your shirt says better together. I feel like that is an apt little title here for this conversation. So I'm going to start us off. I know we'll get to the details of this merger, but I'd really love to start off by learning a little bit more about you. John, I'm going to start backward with you first. How did you come to be the personal and professional version of yourself?
I love that question. I think the short story of that is, I grew up as a low-income Black boy in small town Corvallis, Oregon. Tried to figure out how to navigate the world, and largely on my own. I went out east for undergrad, had a challenging experience, I would say, culturally at my higher ed institution, and then kind of struggled, but was successful in figuring out my early professional path, which led me into education and where I've spent the last 15 years. But I would say those early challenges have inspired my life's work, which is around supporting primarily low-income youth in navigating their college and early career journeys.
So often we hear that people are moved by people or circumstances in their own youth, and that drives them to affect change for future generations. And that to me is one of the most powerful stories because there's no better experience than having it yourself. John, and I really appreciate you sharing that with the audience here today.
Thank you.
Steve, same question for you. How did you come to be the personal and professional version of yourself?
Yeah, I was not a great student growing up, but did well enough that college was an option for me. Neither one of my parents had gone. My older brother went to college when I was in fifth grade, and within 6 months, he was back home. And so when I graduated high school, my dad was telling me, I have two choices. I can go work full time with him. He worked for Pan Am at the time, or that had become Delta, and with the airlines, or you can go to college. And I decided I'd try, and I made every wrong move you can make on that path. Right, I made all the wrong choices, took the wrong courses, and was really sort of flailing. And then I made a friend, and he like me, his family was from Puerto Rico, but he had grown up in real affluence, and he knew how to navigate the system, and he became sort of like my personal guide through college. He helped me complete my college degree. He helped me apply to graduate school. He paid for my college application to graduate school. And so I recognized early on that great things in life require partnership, require consistent, caring partners. And so for me, it became how I wanted to spend my life, being able to be that type of person for other people.
That is such a beautiful story. And the world needs more people like your friend who stuck their arm out. And now the two of you are doing this work more officially than just through college mentorship through a peer. Let's talk about what you've built together, and why you're together now. So who wants to take that on? John, Steve?
Steve, you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I can start. I think we were two separate organizations. Bottom Line started 30 years ago. Sort of one of, if not the premier player in the space when it came to like proof of efficacy. We had a randomized control trial done in our study. We were known as sort of the impact player in the space, working with students, about 7,000 students from across the country. Um, and Get Schooled was this amazingly large, beautifully tech forward platform that was helping hundreds of thousands of students across the country. And for us and for me, we John and I had become friends over years of being in common space. Our funders, we had shared funders, and they would bring us to conferences together and things like that. And over the years, we'd always talked about like, is there partnership or is there something that can happen here? Um, but we started to recognize that there were real gaps in each of our programs that the other organization could fill. And it quickly turned from two friends talking about ways that they can partner, to two CEOs recognizing that in order to reach the type of impact nationally that we each aspire to help as many students across the country as we each aspire to, that we would be better together doing that, which is sort of the slogan, which is why John's shirt says that.
That's right.
Um, but we recognized that we would be much stronger and better together doing this work, and so it became clearer and clearer through those conversations that merging was the best approach for both organizations.
Yeah, and I agree with everything Steve said. I would add two things too. One is, and Steve spoke to this, there had been a long friendship, a deep respect. Both of us oftentimes sitting on panels and speaking at conferences and things like that. But I also think what was foundational for this was the trust that we had built over the years, right? And the shared values late evenings at conferences would share stories about our childhood and how we navigated the journeys that Steve and I shared earlier. And there was so much that we had in common in the ways that we were leading our respective organizations that it felt like there was a natural fit. And then the second thing that I'll add is I think also, both of us also recognized that times are changing in this country. And you cannot, especially as a nonprofit, but probably across all sectors, you cannot continue to operate the way that you've done it in the past and expect to achieve success. And so I think we started to think very differently about how we wanted to lead going forward, and that increasingly looked like a merger.
So, from the moment that you were sitting over breakfast, having this discussion about coming together, what have been some of the easiest parts of bringing two organizations together, and what have been some of the more challenging aspects of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think what felt real easy to John's point is that recognition of like, um, we knew right away that there was really significant values alignment. And so, I think in conversations, because I think both organizations we had these types of conversations in the past, but we recognized that we were both in this for the same reason. And that what we wanted was to put students first, their needs first, their success first, and that all of the other stuff we could figure out if we really believed that what was best for students needed to come first. And so that was super easy. And I think, it allowed us to jump past a lot of conversation, be like, oh, yeah, yeah, we can figure that out. That's not a big deal, right? Little things like that I think trip up a lot of our organizations, like who should be the CEO of the merged organization and who's not, or what should the organization be called? And like those conversations were easy because we were like, well, what's best for students? And how do we think about this? And um, I think the hardest conversation we had, and it was actually made easy by John, was the one around leadership, right? And I think we both walked into saying, I said I'd easily work for John. John said I'm open to working for you, and that made it so that like we were able to think about what would make the organization successful for students, what would be best, and recognizing John's just amazing abilities to help organizations integrate technology and programming from the work they did at Get Schooled. It made sense that be part of the work that he would lead, right? And while bottom line serve fewer students, because we were a face-to-face organization, we were just more complex. We had regions, and so like the complexity of the type of organization we were building, and that experience with me was something that John was like, that makes sense for you to be in the role you were. And so like the hardest conversations were actually made easy because we grounded first in what was going to be best for the students in the work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you know, it was it I can't emphasize how easy that part of the conversation was. It was 3 or 4 minutes,
Yeah.
which if you think about other organizations that are merging, I mean that could be 6 months, right? That,
Totally.
board
Totally.
fights over that. So that was easy. I would say in terms of, what's been most challenging, I don't know that there was anything that was particularly challenging as we navigated the merger conversations. I would say, and we identified this, Steve and I, up front. Our organizational cultures, while we have shared values and aligned missions, our organizational cultures are quite a bit different, and that a lot of that was driven by the size differential and sort of our ways of operating. So again, we had about 13 employees, bottom line, 150, 160. Bottom line is, several regional offices, Get Schooled, all digital, all virtual. And so it just meant that as a smaller organization, Get School has tended to move much more quickly because we had to socialize ideas with far fewer people, right?
Sure.
And we only had one sort of service delivery model, if you will. And so I think as we've integrated over the last 6 or so weeks, I wouldn't say that it's been challenging necessarily, but that's the area where we're needing to spend additional time beyond the technology integration, really sort of care and feeding the new culture that we want to build together.
Yeah. What's that phrase? Um, it's worthwhile when it's worth doing. And I think that's the way we approach it, right? We know that the integration is the quote unquote hard part, and it's complex,
Mm.
and you've got to navigate that, but it's worth work doing. And so, you know, you get up every day and you face it. That's the work that you do.
Yep.
You two, the way you speak and collaborate, it is so clear to me that your underlying values are aligned. Putting students first needs to be the center of every conversation in education. I think would behoove the audience to learn a little bit about what you're doing now. Like, what is the new bottom line for bottom line?
I love the pun intended,
I
by the
mean, I
way. We use it
really
all the time
tried
with
for that
bottom line.
one. I'm
No,
glad
that
Well,
you
was
yeah,
good. I
you
love
appreciate
that.
you earned it. You earned it.
it.
You earned it. You earned it. That was a good one. Um, and I think John should jump in here. But what I'll say is this: we are trying to operate under sort of a simple premise. What happens when the preeminent impact player and the preeminent scale player combine their strengths, right? That's the promise of the future. Bottom line, merge with Get Schooled, right? And so the work now is sort of fulfilling on that promise, and John can share a little bit more about what that transformation looks like. But really, it's that simple thing. So many funders, I think, when they're in our space, we hear them say like, well, our strategy is to try to help the impact players, the proven programs scale. And then another fund will say, well, no, our strategy is different. Like, it's too hard to scale. We're gonna fund the programs that are already at scale, just improve their practice. Um, and what we're able to say is like, you don't have to choose between those two strategies at bottom line because we're doing both at the same time. So John, I'll let you talk a little bit
Yeah.
more about that.
No, no, I think that's exactly right. So as we sort of drill down from there, I think we think about our program delivery model in three ways, and I would just say across those three ways, we support really three journeys. One is helping young people to prepare to continue their education after high school, so access typically. The second is to then be successful during their tenure in higher ed. And then the third is around their early career preparation. And so that's, trying to help ensure that young people secure jobs within 6 months after graduating. So what's been beautiful about this marriage between us is that we're now able to support young people from ninth grade in high school all the way through 6 months post-graduation. So really the period of their lives where they're making fundamental, incredibly impactful decisions, they've got bottom line right by their side. So that's sort of the arc of tenure of supports. And then we think about our supports with three different service delivery models. So the first is our scaled support. So that's really the social media that comes largely from Get Schooled's service delivery model historically. Um, in any given year, we're literally engaging millions of students. So last year, we had more than 116 million views of our content. And that content is completely ungated, freely accessible to any student in the country. And on any given day, we see on the digital side, we can see young people and educators engaging with that content all across the country. So it's really fabulous. The second, if you think of this sort of as a funnel, the second tier of that is really around personalized supports. So that's where young people are coming into Bottom Line and get and sort of the Get Schooled platform as we merge those together, and they're signing up for accounts. And when they do that, that allows us to gather some personal information that we can then use to drive a more personalized experience. So last year, for example, we reviewed and commented on more than 4,000 college application essays. We did nearly 1,000 resumes. We helped more than 20,000 kids navigate through the FAFSA. And then we can deliver content that is more personalized to their specific journey, their region in the country, et cetera. And then as the funnel continues, we get to our relational supports. And so that's where the sort of the historical bottom line service delivery model comes in. That's the one-on-one, in-person, highly intentional, relational that spans over multiple years. And so I think the thing that one of the reasons why we're so excited about this merger is that we sort of think about the elevator approach that operates between those three service delivery models and the intelligence that we can gather from those in-person sessions with our bottom line advisors and our bottom line students, as well as sort of the digital footprints that young people are leaving. And we can cross-pollinate that intelligence and use that to drive enhanced impact through better content, better AI coaches, enhanced conversations between the advisors and the students. So, and we love our brothers and sisters in this work, and we're very proud of what we're building together because we think it's the right combination to deliver impact at scale across the country.
Yeah. One last thing I'll say here, think about it as supports for students based on their needs,
Mhm.
right? And meeting students where they are, constantly reflecting back on itself and improving our service delivery across all three levels constantly by what we're learning on the ground with students day to day.
Mhm.
I love when approaches are multi-pronged and attack from multiple angles, and that sounds like very much how this is being approached.
Yep.
I do also know that the value of college is being debated louder than ever right now. So, how do you talk to skeptical students or parents or family members about why a degree is still worth it?
Well, I
Mhm.
mean, I think that the data will share, and I think Raj Chetty is probably best at sort of his research probably sort of points to this best, that the most consistent and reliable way to a life full of choices and economic mobility is through a bachelor's degree. That doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has to get their bachelor's degree. And what that means is that, like, that is the way that we can most reliably ensure that students find economic and social mobility, which is what we want for our students. So that's sort of my professional answer. My snide answer is typically the people who are saying those things that college is invaluable. They themselves have a college degree, and all of their children are planning to go through college. And so I often ask, well, who's the messenger of that message? And so one of the beautiful things about this merger that we see as not one of the reasons why we engaged in the merger, but as a beautiful way, externality of it, extra benefit, if you will, is that we now have the ability through the combination of our programs to start talking with students as early as ninth grade to be able to help them understand what is the best post-secondary pathway for themselves, to sort of skip the media frenzy around is a college worth it or not, and jump right to like what's best for you as an individual. One of the things that Bottom Line has always been prided itself on is helping students get through college in an affordable way.
Hmm.
Affordability typically is the point that most people are talking about there. And a couple of data points about our relational program that I think is important. Bottom line students are 23% more likely to graduate in 4 years. The average debt load at graduation for a bottom line student is $19,000, or $5,000 less than I still owe on my college degree. Um, um, Over 70% of our students are gainfully employed within 6 months post graduation, and their starting salaries is typically twice what their family income was when they started with us. And so you can't tell me looking at that data that college degree wasn't worth it for that student, right? And so if we can help students understand that there is an affordable pathway that's going to help them find the success they want for themselves, choice-filled lives is what we're trying to create here. And so it makes sense.
Yeah, and I obviously agree with everything Steve just said. I thought it's a beautiful overview. The only thing that I would add is I think when we hear those the anecdotal conversations about whether college, college is worth it, and the additional airtime that that's getting across the country, I think one of the things that I would say to young people and to everyone engaging in that conversation is we need to take the long view of um, the value of education. Because I think the context that that usually gets presented is, you can go work for company X and make $26 an hour. And for a young person who's coming from a low income family, that sounds really compelling.
Yeah.
And it's going to meet immediate needs that they have. And those are very real needs. And I say that coming, having worked a lot as a kid. So we're not undervaluing the relevancy of that point. But the problem is we know that the trajectory of that job is unlikely to scaffold to a living wage, a family living wage, right? And so that's where the problem is. And so part of our role and responsibility and opportunity here at Bottom Line is to help young people make decisions that are informed by a longer horizon that they more immediately see and that they're used to seeing perhaps in their families and in their communities. So,
I was going to ask you, I know that you've used this phrasing before, savvy consumers of higher ed, to
Mhm.
describe how students should be as they approach their post-secondary life and whatever goes beyond that. And I was going to ask you, like, what does it look like when a student graduates, having gone through bottom line? And you already
Mhm.
answered that for me because I am a big believer in using data to refute
Mhm.
anyone, and you did that beautifully. And that data was really impressive. Like, that is a story unto itself about
Yeah.
the power of knowledge, support, and really, truly long game investment in a child's life.
yeah.
So hats off to
Yeah.
both of you for the individual contributions to those metrics you shared, but also to the collective future impact that you two will have as a merged organization. I'm curious what you think it will look like in 5 years if this goes beyond your wildest dreams. Like, what will it be?
Yeah, I mean, my hope is that we are seeing the merged entity working with upwards of 1.5 million students per year across those three different levels of programming. And like back of the envelope estimates means that that is potentially over 100,000 new bachelor's degrees a year because they're better off having worked with bottom line. That for me is the thing that I care most about. There's a lot of talk about scale in education now, and rightly so. It's really, really important. But I think both of us would tell you that what is most important to scale is impact, not just service delivery. And so for us, it's not just that we can serve 1.5 million students, but it's that we can produce so many more choice-filled lives with the work that we're doing. You know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of new college graduates is the game for us, and so that's the future I'm looking forward um, to ensure that as our new vision says, every student in America can have access to, whether it be digitally or in person, to RCT proven supports, tools, and advisors. That's the goal.
Yeah. And I would just add to that to say, again, going back to the values point we were making earlier, Both Steve and I personally and with our respective organizations always put kids at the center. And so everything that Steve just said, I think is spot on. And I would say one of the things that we were mindful of as we thought about this merger was both of us have led our respective organizations for about 7 years. We've been in senior roles for 15, 20 years prior to that. And so I think we have a decent amount of respect in the field for our accomplishments thus far. And I think we saw this as an opportunity to model for the field of what a merger could look like. Not out of sort of a need of, one organization is going underwater, and so they merge out of necessity, but out of a compelling vision for what we can offer the field together. And so I think in the spirit of that, I would say that part of the vision that we hope to craft as well is to serve as an example for the field. I would also say um, to build a new culture at bottom line that is best in class, that demonstrates how you go through a merger with, complementary visions and missions, but slightly different cultures, and you come out on the other end better than you were before. As a model again for the field and an exemplar for how we can run nonprofits that are education focused in difficult times. So that's also important to us as we navigate forward.
Co-signed everything John said, except for the fact that he told how long we've been doing this work, and I don't want folks to know how old I am
Yeah.
because there's no video here, John. So why give
Steve
up the
just
game?
joined the 50 plus club where
Yeah,
I've been sitting for about a year. So we feel seasoned right now.
You
season is
know
a good way to
what?
talk about it.
We view that as expertise and
That's right.
experience and wisdom.
That's right.
Clearly, you've learned a lot, and the humility that both of you have kind of brought this message to light with on this podcast is really inspiring.
Thank you.
I know that there have been a few big name mergers in the nonprofit space over the past couple years,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of questions around those. And so for you to be out there talking about why, how, and
Yeah.
what the purpose is really hopefully does serve as a beacon for others as they think about future paths forward and what is best for children.
Thank you. Thank you. And I would say, one of the things that, Steve and I look like this work is still difficult, right? We still have to raise the money, right? To deliver on our mission. And that was part of our due diligence on the front end of the merger. Like how receptive would funders be to this merger? And I think we received some early positive signals, and the landscape remains very, very challenging for
Very,
for
yes.
nonprofits and for education nonprofits. And I think foundations and corporations are rethinking their giving during these times. And so these are difficult times that we're navigating, and we're just putting our best foot forward. So
Yeah. Hoping people step up.
yeah, yep.
Yeah. It the challenging nature of this landscape, especially in education, with really restrictive language that can be used to apply for certain funding opportunities. And I have heard it time and time again on the podcast, but also in person when I talk to nonprofits and even school districts applying for particular grants.
Mhm.
It is extremely restrictive.
Mhm.
And the fortitude that I see and the inspiration I see of leaders like yourselves to still champion the right things
Mhm.
for children, all children, but especially
Yeah,
children who have been historically oppressed and systemically marginalized is
yeah.
really powerful. And it gives me a lot of hope. Um, a lot of
Well,
hope.
Yeah. I mean, I
thank you.
think that the fact that that's, for us, it's professional, but also personal. I
Mhm.
mean, you know, uh, two kids who came up through it and who are on the other side of it now, just trying to do the right thing.
Yep. And as we said, I think before the call, we're both parents, right? So we
Yeah.
both have high schoolers. So this is also very front and center, those personal
Too
journeys,
front and center.
very front and center every day. Um,
Should we bring him in the call? Steve, I heard your
Oh,
kids are home this
oh
week.
no. No, no,
Just
no, no,
kidding.
Definitely
no.
not. Um, yeah, so it's very personal. But the other thing I'll say too is that Get Schooled prior to the merger had been around for 15 years. And in those 15 years, I'm very proud to say that Get Schooled never turned away a single student. So, while it was the case that a disproportionate number of our students are coming from low-income families, and that disproportionately means they're Black and brown, we've always been an inclusive organization. And so, I think we're built together. We're built for this moment.
Mm,
Our
Yeah,
doors are open. We want to see young people thrive from every background, right?
yeah,
Rural and urban and Black and white and Latino. We're there to serve, and I think the moment calls for organizations like ours to step into the void.
yeah.
mm. I love that. So, as a final question, I'll ask you both what advice you would give a student who's just embarking, maybe ninth grader, thinking about what comes next. What would you tell them? John, I'll start with you.
Sure. I'd say, who was it? Was it Flavor Flav? Don't believe the hype, right? College still
Yeah.
matters.
Yeah.
College
I
is
want to, yeah,
different.
boy, that. Yeah,
Exactly.
boy.
Exactly, right? College still
Feels right.
matters.
Yeah.
Keep your eyes on the prize, right? Stay focused. Don't be deterred by shiny objects sitting over on the left and the right hand side. Stay the course.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
Steve?
and the only thing I'd add there too is that, um, I think a lot of tension and the nervousness in this time for students comes about them trying to put their best foot forward to somehow feel like the they deserve to be part of an institution. And I want students to flip it around. Should those institutions have the privilege of helping you achieve your next goals in life? And so when you approach the college and post-secondary landscape with the I bring tremendous value here, and who should I give the privilege of working with me in the future? It sort of flips the narrative, and suddenly helps you think differently about that future. And so for me, I'd always say is like, does that institution deserve you?
Mm,
And those are real questions to ask yourselves.
love that.
I love that too. Steve, John, thank you so much for coming on the Learning Can't Wait podcast and sharing your stories. It's been a pleasure meeting you both and getting to talk about bottom line and everything that you're building together.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I
Thank you.
appreciate
We
it.
really appreciate the time.
Yeah.
And thank you everybody for tuning in today. Thanks for listening to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and share this episode. Be the first to know when we have a new episode by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or have a suggestion for an episode, email us at podcast@fullmindlearning.com.